excessively. Is that how you see it?
In this instance, no.
Oh.
I think there's a perfect storm here, McGraw, with a touchy political issue, gun control,
Sure,
in a presidential campaign. Let's see if we can break it down.
Right.
He did basically four things yesterday. One, he asked Congress for additional funds, $500 million for mental health, 200 additional ATF personnel, 230 additional FBI personnel. Secondly, he directed the federal prosecutors across the United States to refocus their efforts on prosecuting gun crimes under federal statutes. And number three, he called for more research on gun technology from a safety standpoint. So of those three of the four things he did yesterday, I would venture to guess none of those is particularly controversial. They're certainly not executive orders,
right,
by any stretch.
Well, and also people say, hey, why don't you just enforce the laws that are on the books already? That's sort of what he's...
And that was one of... He had Attorney General Lynch had a conference call yesterday with all 92 United States attorneys, presumably with Mr. Callahan here in St. Louis, and made that point. The fourth action that he took yesterday, McGraw and Kelly, was that he clarified the executive branch's position on the federal gun statute, which says that certain things happen if you are engaged in the business of dealing in firearms. That's the statute that's been on the books since 1993. And what he has said is the position that the Obama administration is going to take is that they are going to read that expansively to include, among other contexts, gun shows. So it does what he's not saying is if you sell a gun at a gun show, you are subject to the statute. What he's saying is you don't get an automatic pass as far as the administration is concerned. That's not an executive order. It certainly doesn't raise the constitutional issues that you and I have talked about in the past about the immigration actions that he's taken. Let me see if we can set the stage in this way. Millhaven Guns Limited, a store.
Right.
Okay? You are engaged in the business of dealing in firearms. Two things flow from that, McGraw. Number one, you have to have a federal license.
Right.
And number two, you have to do a background check on everyone to whom you sell a firearm.
And that's the law.
That's the law, been the law since 1993. Kelly, on the other hand, she has a weapon that she inherited from her uncle. And she wants to sell it to me. Last week, she could sell it to me without having a license. Last week, she could sell it to me without doing a background check. Today, after the president's announcement yesterday, Kelly can do the same thing. It's the middle area that's causing all the controversy. Is a person who sells guns at a gun show, is that person engaged in the business of dealing in firearms, end quote. And that's the question.
And so he is redefining that gun show dealer, trying to make him as close to a gun shop owner as a gun show owner.
Not quite, McGraw. Presidents can't redefine statutes as much as some of the political commentators on the presidential arena would like to say.
Right.
What he is saying is we are going to take this position in terms of who must have a firearm license and who must perform background checks. Now, in our system, McGraw, those balls and strikes get figured out in federal courts. Give you a separate example, but I think it's a very good analogy. The federal statute on insider trading. The Obama administration has taken a very aggressive and expansive approach to the definition and scope of that statute. And they had several convictions in New York. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals pushed back and reversed those convictions and said, no, the interpretation and application that you are using, Obama administration, federal prosecutor in New York, is too expansive. And those convictions were vacated. So in this instance, they are taking an expansive view of the phrase engaged in the business of dealing in firearms. And again, it's not that suddenly people are going to have their guns confiscated in
Right.
that context. It's if you are engaged, you have to get a license, and if you have a license, if I want to buy a gun from you, McGraw, I have to have a background check done on me.
All very interesting. All the reasons why we have Greg Willard with us to break through all the clutter and explain it the way you explain it to your law students as a St. Louis University law professor. Greg Willard, great as always. Thanks for coming in.
Good to be with you, my friend.
You got
Thanks,
it.
Kelly.
Really good.